Welcome back to some Fear and Hunger content. With how well my last video did, amassing over 10k views and somehow getting the Fear and Hunger channel itself to subscribe to me, I decided to make some more content on it. But this time, let's talk about some lore. Specifically, let's go over the gods. However, we're just going to go over the general ideas and basics of every god. If this video does well, great. I'll make some more videos and go into deep depth on each god. If not, that's okay, and this could just be a one-off fun video. So let's get a little groundwork down here first. There are 4 categories of gods in the Fear and Hunger universe. The first of which is the old gods. These gods are akin to the creators of the universe, the primordial forces of the universe, and those who use them. Think Cthulhu or the King in Yellow, things like that. The gods that are in this category include Sylvian, Gro-Goroth, the god of the depths, Rare the moon god, and Venushka. The second category of gods are the new gods. The new gods are immortal beings that have ascended, and that is ascended in quotation marks, by the way, by sitting on the throne in the throne room of Mahabharata. They are gods, technically, but they don't have a huge amount of power or influence that the old gods have. These gods include Francois, the dominating one, Nilvian, the endless one, Valtil, the enlightened one, Shambhara, the tormented one, and the tainted one, the radiating one, the heartless one, as well as the 9 chromatic blights, which as of December 27th, the time I'm writing this, there's no lore on the 9 chromatic blights. The third category of gods are the ascended gods. These are a sort of combination of the last two. They were once mortals and ascended, but they were pretty much sired in by an old god, sort of. Kind of like a sponsored ascension in a way. They have the power and power of the old gods, as well as massive influence over the world. The only 2 we know of these right now are Alll-Merr, the ascended one, and the god of fear and hunger. The fourth type of god are gods that don't really fit into any of the last 3 categories. There are lots of these, and they're mostly unimportant. However, 3 of these are very important. Those 3 are Logic, the machine god, the sulfur god, and Vitruvia. All of which are not directly placed in the former 3 categories, but maybe retconned at some point and put into them, but they're kind of different currently in time. Almost all of the gods can be encountered in game one way or the other, whether it be a straight up fight, a fight with the remnants of the god, or even just books teaching the player of the spells pertaining to that god. In Fear and Hunger 1, you are tasked with killing 4 current new gods to be able to sit on the throne and ascend yourself. Although you only fight 3 of them, this means that although the new gods are powerful and have some sort of godly abilities, they are killable. However, they don't really die as humans would. They're just sent to the Grand Hall of the new gods, which is basically just a place where every new god who quote-unquote dies or falls out of power in some way goes to. Here they wait for eternity. For what? We don't know. But it just seems they sit here at the tables and talk amongst themselves. The old gods, however, are a bit more forthcoming with skills and spells to aid you, although they don't ask for worship or anything since they have long since departed from this world. You can get things such as powerful blood magic or healing magic this way. In Fear and Hunger 2, you can use chalk to draw symbols of the old gods and they'll give you a gift or some benefit as long as you use them in the right types of summoning circles. We'll go over what those benefits are when we get into each god's summary. However, the gods are obviously an important gameplay mechanic in these games. Knowing them and using their influence is more important in Fear and Hunger 2 than in the first game, where you can just kind of blindly walk your way through the game if you're lucky. Alright, let's get into the juicy stuff. The summary of each god and what they'll do for you. We'll start with the old gods because usually they have the most lore and they're the easiest to talk about. Sylvian is the goddess of love. She is the creator of humankind in her own image and is usually characterized by a phallic-shaped tentacle monster. She loved mankind so much that she only wishes to be loved back for her worship. However, it's impossible for humans to love back the goddess as much as she loves them. So she left this world and mankind a long time ago. There's still people that worship her here today in game, usually performing orgies and spreading love in her name. And her symbol is that of an eyeball, however you could also say it's a vagina. And the type of magic gifted by Sylvian includes healing magic as well as the marriage of flesh. Gro-Goroth is the god of destruction and death. Although he is the god of death, he is not inherently evil, as life and love cannot flourish without death and the end of things. He is the husband of Sylvian, his counterpart. You can worship him and gain affinity by partaking in human sacrifices and blood sacrifices. Like his wife, he left this world and mankind a long time ago. There are still people that worship him, or at the very least use Gro-Goroth for pure power. The Yellow Mages are really good in blood magic, as well as people in the depths of the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger, which are partaking in blood orgies. The type of magic gifted by Gro-Goroth is blood magic and hurting magic. You can also learn necromancy and blood golem magic from him as well. Very important spells. The God of the Depths doesn't have as much lore as Gro-Goroth or Sylvian, however, there is still a little bit we can talk about. He's the god of those who are forgotten, or you can also say he's the god of darkness. You see a lot of his influence in the first game, and he is the one manipulating the dungeons and darkness within them. Getting affinity with him will give those reign over the darkness and small creatures. There are people that worship him, albeit far, far less than the other 2 old gods. People such as cave dwellers and rats and insects are amongst those who are close to the God of the Depths. The type of magic given by the God of the Depths include mastery over insects and flocks of crows. Rare is the God of the Moon, and the first one that is just straight not fond of humans. So much so that he takes his minion Pocket Cat and will find and kill the child that is destined to ascend to godhood. As in Rare's eyes, no human should be able to ascend into godhood. In the second game, he is shown to be a trickster. He toys with humans and is the master of the Termina Festival, a festival for the moon god in which 14 people kill each other until there's only one left. He's also the god of madness, the god of tricks, and the god of the moon. He too, however, has left this world. There are a few people that worship Rare, including Pocket Cat and, at least at one point, Perkle. The magic gained from his affinity includes gaining aura reading abilities and being able to access deeper parts of Rare's realm. Venushka is the god of nature and the offspring of Gro-Goroth and Sylvian. However, nature can both be calm and tranquil, but also fiery and destructive. He's lost a lot of power as the human world advances and nature receded. However, there are still traces of him. There's never anyone directly stated to be a follower of Venushka. However, I'm assuming all animals are kind of like pseudo-followers, as well as the owl cultists in Fear and Hunger 2 might also be followers of him, but we never expressly told that. Magic gifted by Venushka includes fire magic as well as plant magic, including roots that reap. The new gods are far less influential, and are frequently cycled in and out until they are ordained to the Grand Hall of the New Gods, where they sit and wait for eternity. For what? Who knows? Francois the Dominating One was the quote-unquote final obstacle in the first Fear and Hunger game. He's selfish, arrogant, however in his later years, after experiencing so much time, he's become docile and he understands that he's just a cog in the machine. He led an expedition in the year 809 for his party to become new gods, and he is widely hated by almost all new gods. Nilvian, the Endless One, ironically, realized her reign was going to eventually come to an end, so she found a man of prophecy, who was supposed to become an ascended god and conceived a child with him. Doing this made sure her reign would not entirely come to an end, as her child would become a true ascended god, and continue her legacy. She was also part of the expedition in the year 809 to become new gods. Voltaire is the god of enlightenment, who, once again, ironically had no idea how to bridge the gap between the new gods and the old gods. He also crafted beings in the ancient city of Mahabharata to be servants. He loves all knowledge, and if you know the lore of the gods and the games, in the fight with him, he will get a headache if you talk to him, and take tons of damage. He's also one of the new gods that was on the expedition in the year 809. Shambhala is my favorite new god, and he is the Tormented One, and looks very fucking cool when you fight him. He was consistently tormented until he became this skinless being that you see in-game. He was a poet in life, and ironically, he is very eloquent, and he holds most of the values from when he was still human compared to all the other new gods, despite his grotesque appearance. He was, once again, on the expedition in the year 809 to become a new god. Betel, I don't know how to pronounce this, was not part of the expedition in the year 809, and there isn't a whole lot known about him, other than he created a lot of the libraries in the city of Mahabharata. He was one of the old enlightened gods, and eventually was tricked by our next entry into losing his position. Nashra has a lot of lore to him, and he deserves his own video, really. However, we'll do a quick overview of him. He's another god of enlightenment. Nashra is now just a beheaded being that you can find in the first Fear and Hunger game, and the second Fear and Hunger game, too. He will join your party and surprisingly be a constant source of comedy in a horribly bleak game. He is vulgar and just cartoonishly evil, almost. At some point, he did something, we don't know what, that tricked the last enlightened god, and also angered all the new gods in turn. And they made him what he is today, a bodiless head. He now seeks revenge against the new gods. Once they're all quote-unquote dead, he will tell you ascending is not what you think it is. You don't really become a god with the power of the old gods. He'll refuse to ascend with you, as he has already made that mistake once, which is very strangely calm for his character. He can be found again in Fear and Hunger 2 if you're Osa, once again being a source of comedy with all its vulgarness. The Heartless One is a new god in Fear and Hunger 2. There's not a whole lot of lore in her that can be, other than she can be summoned in Fear and Hunger 2, and she is one of the new gods after the events of the first game. She appears to be a woman with wings, and there's a movie about her apparently, as seen on one of the movie posters in Preheval. She also appears to hate all the other new gods, as in her dialogue she will say she hates those, quote, senile old farts. The Radiating One is also a new god in Fear and Hunger 2. There is once again almost no lore associated with him, however he takes your rusty pearls and gives you items for them. Only if you sacrifice a portrait of a young man first. What that means, however, is completely unknown. The Tainted One is, once again, another new god in Fear and Hunger 2. You can summon her after offering several heads. She'll give you soul shards for each severed head, and she's kind of a merchant in that way. She appears to be a woman fused with a throne and metal, but once again, there's not a ton of lore with this, so we don't know anything about her really. Okay, like I said earlier, an ascended god is a mortal who was sort of sponsored by an old god, or shares some sort of connection with an old god. They usually have extreme influence over the human world, and they usually have the same amount, or at least close to that, of the amount of power of old gods. Alll-Merr is one of the most powerful gods in all of eternity in Fear and Hunger. He was born a mortal man and eventually amassed 12 apostles. Eventually, corrupt and evil kings who felt threatened by his rule made a scheme with one of his apostles to crucify and kill Alll-Merr. Alll-Merr, now freed from his humanity, ascended to Mahabra, where he became an ascended god. He then returned to the earth and, along with his apostles, laid waste to all those who would oppose him in a bloodbath, and then established a new world order, which is still widely worshipped today. However, there's another theory how he was created. In-game, there's another book that'll say that Alll-Merr came to existence through the goddess Vitruvia, a lesser god underling of Sylvian. Horrible and evil humans were while bearing the image of Sylvian, so she set out to create a perfect human to take down the current world order. Then the story continues as it did in the first story. If you're familiar with real-life Christianity, you'll see some rather noticeable similarities to Jesus Christ and Alll-Merr. However, Alll-Merr might not be as benevolent as he seems. However, we'll talk more about that and why that is when we get to the Sulphur God in the fourth section of this video. Alll-Merr can give you spells such as Bloodblade and Fast Travel Portals. Don't bother worrying about the on-the-nose name because we all know. The God of Fear and Hunger was created in the first Fear and Hunger game, of course it was, by bringing the offspring of Nilvian and Lagard to the bottom of the abyss inside the God of Depths. Once the player character brings the young girl into the abyss, she will transform and kill the player no matter how hard they fight. Letting you rest finally, saying there's some beauty in letting go. It's beautiful to be a part of a new god, and she'll kill you with mercy and love. In Fear and Hunger 2, she is widely worshipped like how Alll-Merr is. She also has taken some of the God of the Depths' power, such as reign over insects and rats. In a non-canonical ending, Lagard will ascend and become the Yellow King, a perfect being who ascended through the use of the past 4 new god souls. He became the perfect being and will lead the world into a new age. However, canonically, he did not fully ascend, and he became the Kaiser, and not the Yellow King, who has plans with the Machine God, which leads us into our fourth section, the other gods. Our last section is about gods that don't fit into the other 3 categories, whether they be man-made or in some weird way of ascension. Vitruvia is a sort of underling of Sylvian. Not much is known about them other than they are the architect of the human body. It's not expressly stated that she's an old god, or a new god, or an ascended god, she's just kind of mentioned. The Sulphur God is a huge mystery and a huge part of Fear and Hunger 2 Termina. You can only directly hear about him if you get ending C and kill all the contestants by the end of day 2. Perkle, a follower of the Sulphur God, will enact Rare's Termina trial, but in the means to find a new follower of the Sulphur God. Only then will you get a view of the Sulphur God, a badly burned individual with nothing but an eye hole and a weird head shaped like an anvil. Almost everything we know about the Sulphur God is pure conjecture. He seems to be the god of pure freedom and pure individuality. However, that means everyone can do whatever they want, unburdened by humanity, which means a lot of murder and stuff like that. However, how he came to be is directly tied to Alll-Merr, and he's actually his antithesis. Remember earlier when we said that Alll-Merr died and left his humanity behind when he died? Well, here he is, the humanity he left behind. This is a sort of Vanitas and Ventus situation from Kingdom Hearts, where the good and pure ascended and the evil human was left behind. There's a few followers that we can find in Fear and Hunger 2 Termina, such as the murderer in the White Mold Apartments and Stitches and Needles, and obviously my favorite character in the series, Perkle, is also a follower of the Sulphur God. But once again, the Sulphur God deserves his own video, because he has some of the most speculative lore. Logic, the Machine God, is a god created at the end of Fear and Hunger 2, but only if one activate all the telectroscopes and heads to the White Bunker, in which the Kaiser will be waiting to try to become Logic himself after the failure of the last game. Once beating him, you can go in and see Logic, a man-made god. By using technology, mankind can become closer with one another. A sort of internet, but of all human beings losing individuality for the sake of peace. It's almost the exact opposite of what the Sulphur God wants. Like the god of Fear and Hunger, this god was human as well, being Olivia's sister. Becoming one with her is sort of becoming one with everyone. Think of the end of Evangelion. Meeting logic and beating her is also the only way to keep everyone alive in Fear and Hunger too, as far as I know, at least. So that's it. That's an overview of all the gods. If I missed one somehow or another one is mentioned or found, please let me know in the comments and I'd love to discuss it. Also, once again, if this video does really well, like my other Fear and Hunger videos, I wouldn't mind making a video discussing each and every god more in depth. Anyway, like always, thank you for watching and I love each and every one of you.